Ghazi Masood is the Chief Revenue Officer at Replit, an AI-first company with the North Star of hitting $1 billion in revenue by the end of the year.
The speed, agility, and everything has multiplied 100x. Forget monthly, we're literally driving a weekly rhythm to the business.
In this episode, Ghazi reveals how their new go-to-market playbook blows historical benchmarks out of the water for sales team quotas and pipeline productivity.
Is it $2 million a lot per rep? I would say no. Our enterprise reps were.
And Ghazi also shares how his team is replacing or extending other SaaS tools to achieve those results.
We built our own CPQ. We're building our own version of Clari. We built our own customer health dashboard.
If you want to see how a hyper-growth company operates and what go-to-market tactics are winning in 2026, this episode is for you. Welcome to Top Line. Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome to Top Line. I'm the CEO of Pavilion. I'm joined by my friend and co-host Asad Zaman, the CEO of STA. And we've got a very special guest on the show, the Chief Revenue Officer, one of the fastest growing companies in the world. Ghazi Masood is a seasoned GTM executive with nearly 3 decades of experience leading sales organizations, driving revenue growth, and scaling high-performing teams. Over the course of his career, he has consistently ranked among the top leaders at world-class technology companies and has helped build organizations through multiple successful exits. He's recognized for building elite GTM teams, developing exceptional leaders, and delivering sustained commercial results at scale. And currently, he's the Chief Revenue Officer at Replit and also advises founders in partnership with leading Silicon Valley venture capital and private equity firms. But the most important thing is he's CRO at Replit right now, overseeing one of the fastest growing companies in the world. Ghazi, welcome to Top Line.
Good to be here. Thanks, Sam.
We're excited to have you. We've got a lot to talk about. The last time we recorded last week, Asad was not here, but now Asad is back. He is our moderator and our docket preparer. Asad, would you like to share anything with the audience about where you've been?
No, I wouldn't. But one day I will. I am back. I'm here, and I'm very excited to chat with Ghazi. Ghazi, you are. I was thinking about this last night when I was preparing for this, and I can't think of many companies in the history of the earth that have gone from 2 million to 1 billion in revenue in 2 years. So it's like unprecedented, remarkable, shocking, like all of those words fit, right? And we're go-to-market enthusiasts and operators, and we love the game, but we're also in the game. And so I was thinking it's really hard for me to picture what life in your seat feels like. I can academically understand that the world has changed, but you've done this now across a couple of stages, right? Or a couple of different platform shifts. Talk to us about just like how this feels different in your seat doing this compared to whatever was the fastest growing thing that existed prior to this. What is different?
Yeah, I mean, I think the speed, agility, and everything has multiplied 100x, right? If you look at, just give you some examples, like in the SaaS world, most companies run a quarterly cadence. And if you were a revenue leader and you started driving monthly linearity, you were like the king of the business, and the company would go like, oh my God, we're actually closing something month 1 and month 2 instead of having the classic end of quarter hockey stick, right? So that was like genius in the old SaaS world. Here, forget monthly, we're literally driving a weekly rhythm to the business. We do weekly forecast calls, we do weekly hiring updates, we do weekly gong call reviews. It's literally every single week in what we've accomplished. Company-wide, we actually do a weekly all hands. We call it weekly wins. It happens every single Friday. Amjad, our CEO, is there. I'm there. The rest of our executive team is there, and we address the company. So, people used to do hey, let's do a monthly all hands call or a quarterly all hands call. It's literally weekly. So I think the cadence has just accelerated, and the pace and velocity of how we're operating is just something I've never seen. And that's why I think, it's not for everyone, but for the people that kind of know what's at stake and want to be part of the ride and want to be part of the mission, it's a very exciting and rewarding place.
How do you prepare yourself, Ghazi? How do you orient yourself? What have you modified? Obviously, you mentioned the weekly cadence, but what's your dashboard and cockpit look like? How do you think about preparing yourself so that you're in the zone, you're in the flow, in the pocket, you're not chasing anything. You don't feel anxious. You feel in control of this massive machine that's skyrocketing.
Or
You
can
know,
I
I
just add a sub part to that question? Or is that even humanly possible? And
Right.
it's going to
Yeah.
feel insane and crazy, and it's just going
Yeah.
to be wild, and you just have to like hold on and be
That-
like, ah,
You know what? I would love to say that I've got this amazing dashboard that I look at, and I've got all the tools that give me the optics of my business from start to finish. Part of being part of this crazy ride is we're also building the infrastructure, guys. I mean, so if you look at the infrastructure and the systems and the tooling and the dashboards and all of that, that's also being built. It was non-existent before I joined here. There was no RevOps, there was no system. It was so we're completely building it from scratch. So not only are we on this crazy rocket ship of getting our revenue to $1 billion by the end of the year, all of the infrastructure that goes along with that, as you can imagine, from the tools you use, the dashboards you use, the forecasting reports you use, we're building that. We're building that right now. So yes, I do have a version of an app. It's called a Revenue Copilot. That was a AI app, obviously built on Replit. That we use internally. That is kind of my cockpit, if you will, that gives me the day-to-day. But is it perfect? No. Are we
what do you
continuing to
care to
iterate?
look at? Like, what is, I think of, there's no shortage of KPIs that can get thrown our way, analysis that can get done. And sometimes we spend so much time looking at something that's not all that useful. Like, what have you learned is like the critical stuff that you need to keep an eye on, like metrics related, and what's like noise at this sort of growth
Yeah.
level?
So for me, it's pretty simple. And now I'm starting to build like a leadership team underneath me, and I've got some help, which is definitely great. It wasn't like that the first few months I was here. So for me, what I care about, pipeline is king. Without pipeline and without top of funnel, the entire structure collapses. So I keep a really close eye on top of funnel and what we're doing in conversations. We have a term we internally call good fit demo. That's our qualification bar for opportunities. So I look at top of funnel, number of good fit demos, what the distribution is of the BDR team that's at the top level attainment, and how is that keeping according to our plan. So that's one core metric I look at. The other metric I look at is we're doing a lot of hiring and ramp to productivity of like these people we're hiring, we're investing a lot of time in boot camp and enablement. How quickly are they closing their first deal? How quickly
And
are they
how
getting into
quickly
meetings?
are they closing their first deal?
Yeah, it's so initially we had pretty respectable ramp times when we kind of built out the plan for the first half. But what we've noticed is they're accelerating even faster. So we're actually shortening ramp times. I would say about 30 days is probably an
For
average
the first deal.
for the first deal.
This is SMB or like mid market or?
It's predominantly commercial, but it's happening in enterprise as well.
We haven't given you a chance to say what the company is or does, and obviously we assume
If no
99.
one knows this, then like that's crazy. Like, which rock are you living under?
We're trying to appeal to a broad audience here.
That's ridiculous. I don't
We want to
believe.
be welcoming. My impression is this massive market pull, and it's primarily sort of like individual use cases. And so there's this huge PLG motion. I would imagine a lot of what you might be doing is taking, early signups, trial activations, maybe cross-referencing that against a work email. But then there's a set of use cases that you guys must be developing a strong point of view on. What should a commercial business use Replit to build? When you think about like the core use cases, what are they, and how have you layered on the sales motion on top of what I would assume is a natural PLG motion?
So Replit, so we're an AI application creation platform where we're democratizing software creation. We feel that anybody should be able to build software irrespective of your technical background. In the old world, you had to be a developer and an engineer to build a software. We're democratizing that. So we're giving people who don't know anything about tech that sit in business functions to go create and bring their ideas to life. We have 50 million global users. 90% of our users are non-STEM builders. They're people outside of the development and engineering organizations. So they're knowledge workers, people who sit on product teams, finance teams, sales teams, marketing teams, HR teams. Those are the people that are getting the technology to go build, and we make it completely frictionless. No learning, no education, no training, where we sit in the browser and you get a browser and you get to go build, and Replit agent does everything else behind the scenes. So at a very, very simplistic way, that's what Replit is. I would love to tell you that the majority of our leads our self-service upgrades, our PQL and PLG upgrades. That's a major project that I have going on right now. That's my P0 project. We haven't even started to get the benefits and tailwinds of that right now. And there's going to be benefits and tailwinds once we actually go crack that. So yes, when I first got here, 90% of our pipeline was all inbound driven, but it was organic inbound. It wasn't self-service PQLs converting to enterprise. These were net new people coming to us. So that's where the majority of our business has been coming from. I since have actually built an outbound motion because we did not want to rely on our inbound pipeline. So we actually put a BDR hub and housed it in Salt Lake City. And I hired my
Mormons are the best salespeople. I always suggest Salt Lake City.
Yeah. And this is my actually my third time doing that. And I've had good success. So I actually brought my leader from my previous company over here. And we've got a massive BDR hub in Salt Lake City where we're driving outbound. And the month of May was the first month where outbound opportunities actually outpaced inbound opportunities. So whether that's a trend we continue to see, we'll see. But it was definitely a good metric for the month of May. So that's where our pipeline is coming from. The whole classic going into your self-service base, taking a Gmail, enriching it with a corporate domain and looking at product signals, we haven't even started to see the benefits of that. We're working on that as a core initiative right now. And that happens sporadically, but in a programmatic way, that's to come later this year.
Well, what are you telling people to build? Like what should they buy Replit? Is it everything? Is it replacing specific vendors where you really feel like there's product market fit around this use case?
So prototyping is a very common use case we see with our technology. And oftentimes we get in with a prototyping use case because especially if you look at like product and design, you can take things that would take them, months and weeks, down to literally hours. So that's a huge savings. So prototyping is a core one. Internal tools is also starting to come up quite a lot of people replicating internal tools there. Down market in SMB and commercial segment, we're seeing entire businesses being built on Replit. I spoke to a healthcare provider of a clinical company, basically a small startup founder and a small team. They're at $1 billion valuation. He told me his entire stack is built on Replit. After their next fundraise, they want to do a joint case study with us because they haven't ever seen this before, right? So down market, we're seeing the whole SaaSpocalypse, SaaS replacement happening where customers aren't buying Salesforce and they're building their iteration of CRM on Replit. Up market, we're not seeing the systems of record being replaced. Like we're talking to JPMC and others, no one's pulling out their Oracle ERP or their Salesforce CRM. Those systems of record are staying there. But what we are seeing is we're seeing the extensibility of those systems of record with like a, prettier UI or a prettier dashboard, if you will, that's built on Replit. And in fact, that's our use case internally at Replit, by the way, too. We moved from HubSpot to Salesforce. We have Salesforce, but everything else that's built on Salesforce is Replit. Our idea is we don't want our sales reps touching Salesforce. Everything is kind of automated for that.
When I think of the growth trajectory, if I understand it correctly, it's about 100-ish million starting this year. You plan on ending it at $1 billion, right?
We want, without going into specifics, we have a North Star metric to be at $1 billion by the end of the year. Yeah.
Perfect. How do you think about following years when you've had this sort of astronomical growth in a 2-year period? I would imagine that there's this desire to maintain this sort of growth, but exponentials are really hard to maintain as well. I think there's a little signal in the fact that you built this BDR team. It seems like you're looking around the corners like a good CRO and saying, if we need to maintain this crazy growth, we need this outbound function. We need all these ways to generate that pipeline. But how do you think about, as a collective team, next year, what the right number might look like? Or is that a end of year discussion that, okay, now let's look at the game on the field. Let's look at where we are. Let's look at our signals, external signals, and try to figure out, should we go from 1 billion to 3 billion to 5 billion to 7? Like, how do you figure that out?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of assessing the market, of where the market's at. It's a combination of assessing yourself as to what are some of the big bets that haven't been turned on. And there's a lot of big bets internally we just haven't turned on. You look at our move to international. So we're starting that with Europe, right? Europe is there. But if you look at the rest of world.
So far, international is like almost nothing for you guys.
So we have users, and we have revenue, but a intentional GTM team sitting globally. We're just starting that. So if you look at those tailwinds from those things, those are yet to come. So we have to kind of look at all of those factors at the end of the year and look at, hey, here's the market opportunity. Here's what we have. Here's kind of where the white space still is. And here's what it means for us. And then come together as an executive team and make a call as to what, future projections actually go look like.
What seems like the right cadence and all the right point in the year to make that decision? So the reason I asked is I think in the SaaS era, one of the things we got wrong as an overall ecosystem was the planning process companies would go down. Very often you would have companies enter the year without an actual plan. And John McMahon spoke about this a lot. He's like, it's unreasonable the way we do it. We should be solidifying the plan at the end of Q3, early Q4. We should be hiring against that plan. So when we go into the year, we have the capacity against that plan, but usually we just start behind the plan and then we're just always catching up, which is nerve-wracking and anxiety-inducing. What's the right way to do this in the age of AI? When are you making that decision around what we should try to do next year and then soften against it?
Earlier, the better. Our ideal is like Q3. So last year we didn't do it. Last year we did it when I got to the company, and it was already too late, right? So this year we're actually that's why we're playing catch up in our hiring. But while we're doing well, we should have been well ahead of it. So we're playing catch up this year, and we want to avoid that for next year. So Q3 is the ideal time frame. Q3 is kind of the ideal time frame that you start putting some plans together and you start making some projections, you start opening headcount, and you try to get to as best as you can to have butts in seats by Jan 1.
Do you have a point of view, or I'm sure that the leadership team must, on sort of where things settle at some point, like what role Replit plays in a broader commercial ecosystem? Right now, it feels so disruptive. You're probably moving at 100 miles an hour, gobbling up sort of small SaaS contracts and replacing and doing rip and replaces with Replit. But do you have a point of, is it a mission to replace all existing crappy software with home built software? Where do you see this going over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the education of the market is still yet to come, right? So if you look at like our marketing and how we market to enterprise B2B, there's a lot more you'll see from us this year on enterprise B2B marketing of making sure people understand who Replit really is, because there's a lot of misconceptions. They just think, hey, you're just another vibe coding tool. But when you actually peel the layer back and you actually look at the technology, Replit isn't one of those. While our revenue is an overnight success, the business has been at it for 10 years. So if you look at, we're not like some of the others that of companies that just came on the scene 1 or 2 years ago and kind of accelerated growth. Our revenue accelerated, but the business and the DNA and the tech has been around for a decade. And while, you could say that's a very, very long time, important things like security and the way we look at governance and things like that, they're very, very strong in our solution stack. And so that's why the enterprise readiness, we believe we by far are the most credible and most enterprise-ready solution today. But we need to go tell the market that and the world that in a very, very loud way. Where we go and what our desire is as a company and a solution is, we want to be a place. We want to basically be the Excel of application creation. We sit in the browser. Anytime you have an idea, you just come to Replit and get your idea built. And that could be a personal project. That could be a corporate project that you want to go do. That could be a mission critical solution out there. It's kind of all of the above. We want you to be able to go from end to end, anything from prototyping all the way to production grade, all within Replit. And that's our superpower and our strength.
How do you think about, I would imagine that a lot of the competitive dynamics in this enterprise motion would be companies making a decision between using Claude Code and Claude Cowork as like one overall system to do a lot of these things then, versus using Claude Code on the engineering side of the business because it's amazing at that. Maybe there's a little bit of Codettes or Trust. I would like some combination of that or one of them. And then on this side of the business, the non-product side, using Replit. Is that the dichotomy in your mind as well from a competitive landscape perspective? And if so, what's the efficiency of one Claude is everything versus this, this fragmentation. What's the benefit of the fragmentation? How do we
Yeah.
position against that?
Well, I don't think this is a space where it's a winner take all space. The market is just too big. The market is just too big, and it just like when Salesforce came out. Salesforce was a dominant player, but the CRM market was too big, and there was room for multiple players there. I think we're in the same space, and again, it's hard for me to not, I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know what the future holds. But this is my personal belief: is the market is so big that there's going to be room for different players in the market to go capture it. But if you look at the technology you just talked about, there's still different ways to go about it. Claude still very much as their core DNA focuses on the developer and kind of the engineer, right? Yes, they've got adjacent solutions that are trying to get out of that ecosystem and go to a different
Feels like an
persona.
afterthought.
Yeah, but
Feels like an afterthought.
yeah, and we, in fact, at our kickoff at the beginning of this year, we did a competitive dog fooding session with our GTM team, where we basically gave them Replit licenses, Lovable licenses, and Claude licenses, and we basically say, hey, here are the prompts we want you to go do it. People couldn't even get past the setup in Claude, and because if you look at our persona, these are salespeople, these are marketing people, GTM people, they aren't non-tech people. So we believe there's a portion of the market that's kind of in that bucket out there. I mean, clearly, Anthropic and Claude has an amazing solution out there. And for the person that actually has the technical chops, it's a good, viable option for people to go use. So again, I think there's an area of coexisting, but there's also an area of just educating the market, right? Because we aren't after the developer and engineering ecosystem. We're after the knowledge worker and empowering them.
Having used all of these things, I have never had as much fun as I did on Replit. Like, it was the most fun I had. And I'm not sycophantic, so like the audience will know I'm not just saying this because you're here. I'm very happy to tell someone I
You are
don't
not.
get product.
I can confirm he's not sycophantic.
Yeah, that's not a trait I have. It was the most fun. I remember like I was building something and I was in between meetings giving it prompts, and you can give it like all these instructions. So you're not like stuck with one instruction robot. You just give it all its instructions. This is where after Agent 4 came out. And then you come back after a 30-minute meeting and it's like magic has happened. It's gone off on its own thing and figured shit out and come back to you. And it's just like in between meetings. I remember this one day where like it was 6 hours of meetings, and every in between I would give it a new set of instructions. At the end of the day, I had something really cool and it looked great and it was cool. And there was like this appreciation for design in it. And then there was like this scary moment where it's like, here's some free credits to check its security holes. And I was like, I pressed it. It's like all these holes. And I was like, okay, great. Like, so we can plug them. Because I put some really sensitive information in that. So it was really cool. It was the most, it was the most fun I'd had.
Ghazi, I think to your point, as I'm thinking about the size of this opportunity, and and obviously maybe Pavilion is the beneficiary of some of those marketing dollars, but it really does feel like brand is critical here. It feels like you have to know when to think of Replit, because to your point, it may and my even just looking at like your logo right now as I'm staring at it, it does feel like Replit is the B2B brand. It does feel like Lovable might be like the B2C brand. And if we want to dismiss them, we can as well. But I have this problem. Oh, Replit will help me solve it. And that really will require a marketing investment of, that should spend the money that you've raised, I think, because that takes time to build. But then you have this amazing opportunity. It's got to be so exciting because you can build something like American Express. You can be the new Salesforce, which is really cool.
They've got such a great CEO though, right? Like, so I think brand becomes easier when you have somebody like Amjad on like Joe Rogan talking about this. Like, that's like which other B2B enterprise focused brand CEO wasn't like Joe Rogan talking? Like, it's a really interesting new way of like branding companies as well. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. And we're gonna get Amjad out there more, right? Because that's a superpower. And like you said, but true, but he's been the marketing, face of the company up until now. But you're going to see a lot more from us in marketing and this year.
I love what you said when you said that's not our ICP. This is who our ICP is, because I think it's going to require choices that might feel constraining in the moment. You've got all of these leads coming in. You're going to $1 billion in revenue. You're put a plan together in a couple months. You're going to go to $3 billion or $4 billion next year, and it's going to feel there's going to be this pressure, like we got to take every single dollar. And, the minute that your weekly forecast starts slipping below the trend line, you start freaking out. And I think that the requirement to build something truly sustaining and enduring is saying, we are for these people. This is what we do. We don't do these things. That's
Yeah.
not who we are. That's going to require some discipline because the instinct, but I think the benefit is you've been doing it for 10 years. So this is not the first time that he's been planning for this, a 10-year overnight success, because that is the discipline that I myself have struggled with at times, which is there's an opportunity over there. I could go chase it. No. Just stay focused on doing
That's
what
right.
your thing is.
Yeah. And that's going to be like really, really important of just, doing that. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff that goes there, right? Like a positioning and messaging framework and messaging by ICP, use cases by industry, like all of those things we need to go build to arm our sellers to effectively go have those conversations right now. And for me, those are like massive tailwinds because those aren't even things we have right now. And, we're doing really, really well. But once we get those operationalized this year and really, really start cooking with that, I think it's going to be a huge, huge benefit.
How do you plan for the future when something that has this huge impact on what is possible is model improvement? There was this inflection point with, I think it was a few models ago when Claude released a model, and there was this huge inflection point when it came to developers being able to use it, when it came to even Replit and its ability to drive immense value. Like there was a step change difference. And we all, anyone who believes in the power of AI believes that there's going to be more and more improvement that happens. And some of that improvement will be everything we're doing today, just like improving further. But then there'll be like these breakthroughs, these like super technical breakthroughs that change the game. Continual learning, if they figure that out, is a huge shift in how AI works. And so you don't know when that might happen. Even the model makers don't know it. And so is that just like you as a company have this muscle where if there's a technical inflection point, we just stop everything, we look at what that means, and we just replan against all of that? Is that like a
Kind of, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, like there's some benefit as the models get smarter that we're going to get smarter and our technology is going to get smarter and better. That's great. But there's also ways that you can continue to lead from innovation. So we're actually working on that internally right now, and I'm not going to say much on it, but our next release that's going to come out this fall, I think it's going to fundamentally change the way people think about building software. And it's going to be a game changer that people aren't really thinking about. It's a different paradigm. Like today, we're being taught around, prompting skills, and the more specific you can prompt, the better your output and things like that. We're going to kind of flip that on its head with our next iteration of what we're actually building. So part of it is also you have to have a point of view and a viewpoint as to, what you want to go tell and lead the market with. And obviously, the model providers and the technology, that's the underlying layer. The smarter they get, the better your solution on it is. But we're thinking of it from both lenses.
this has been fantastic. But Sam, do you know what time it is?
I
Do
think
you
I
know what-
do know what time it is, my brother.
This is time for Quiz Pro Quo. Okay, so last week I actually listened to the episode. Asia did a quiz. It was really good, but it wasn't as good as when I do the quiz. And so I have worked on this, Ghazi. It is you and Sam versus me. 3 questions. Each question has 3 potential answers. You have to pick the right one. If you get 2 out of the 3 questions right, the 2 of you have won. Usually that doesn't happen. Usually.
Okay.
But you'll be different this time.
Let's
Maybe.
do it.
And just so you
Okay.
understand, Ghazi, the answers that he picks are often quite arbitrary. So, there'll be nominal differences between 3 multiple choice questions. But we'll see. We'll see if there's fairness in how he approaches this game.
This is about the difference between AI native companies and non-AI native companies in terms of how they are structured primarily. There was some really interesting research done in combination between INSEAD and Harvard, and they looked at a lot of really interesting data, including a lot of Y Combinator batch data, to figure out how is the structure of these companies different. And so the first question is, how much smaller do you think AI native firms are per stage of revenue compared to their non-AI native companies? Do you think these companies are 50% smaller, 25% smaller, 10% smaller? than their non-AI native comparisons?
Do I get to go first?
Well,
You
we
both
collaborate. We collaborate. So
We collaborate.
we
Okay.
talk together, but then Asad will lock in whatever feels like a momentum kind of
Gotcha.
answer.
I don't.
If it's wrong, especially
I
if
don't
it's
know,
wrong.
Sam. I mean, I'm kind of leaning towards like I would say like 25%, maybe.
I was going to say 30%.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way, like a way that
there
we
was
can.
no 30% option, Sam. It was 50%.
I know, but I'm saying the closest one would be 25%. But then,
Okay.
well, let me ask you. We can ask questions. Ghazi, how many people does Replit have?
We're about 350 right now.
350.
That's it?
Oh my god!
Are you serious?
Mhm.
That's bananas. And how many of those 350 are in go-to-market?
It's small right now. I think our GTM team, we are just at 75, 80 right now.
I am thinking of this one Series B company from many years ago that had about, I think, 9 or 10 million in revenue. And I remember going to their office and they had 160 employees. And it didn't seem all that crazy back then. It still seemed like a bit more than they should have had. Didn't seem all that crazy. This is wild.
Well, I think it's between 50 and 25.
I would agree with that.
Where do you want to go? I'm going to leave it with you.
Let's do 25.
Let's do 25.
You guys are
Final.
right. Ghazi has good instincts. He said
All
25.
right.
I was very impressed.
Let's go. Let's
That
go.
was very straight.
Normally, Asad, you have like an explanatory sentence afterward, like actually they did this. Do you have anything else to add, or just?
I think it's
that's
very
what happened?
self-explanatory. They use AI really well, and they need less people. It's
Well, let's
quite
see what departments are typically much smaller. Is there?
That's be part of the following questions. Question number two. Question number two is, what percentage of engineers, of the total employees these companies have, which is 25% less than their non-AI native comparisons, what percent of those employees are in engineering? How many more engineers do they have than their AI native comparisons? That's the right way to say it.
Wait, the who is the antecedent here? The first. Say it again.
Okay. Question number two.
Yes.
How many more engineers do they have compared to that than AI native companies compared to their non-AI native companies?
Okay.
Okay. Option number one, 5% more. Option number two, 13% more. Option number three, 33% more.
I don't think it can't be the last one. I don't think it's 33%. I think the first one is too small. I think it's 13. I think it's around 13% more.
I'll go with 13. It's either 5 or 13.
Ghazi is the best we've had at this. This is like straight, like
Hey, that's a bit sycophantic. That is a bit.
It's a little bit. He's like the first person who's done it like this. I'm very impressed. I have lost here with the consolation prize. Maybe I beat you guys here.
Was it 13%? By the way,
Yeah, it was right.
Oh,
Asad, what do you
okay.
think about that? What's your takeaway there? Like, do you have any perspective on it?
I think if you look at the amount of product that is being shipped out by these companies, which is, I think, one of the things we want to discuss with Ghazi as well, is how do you enable a team against this much product development? But that you are noticing that first stage that a company reaches, the amount of stuff that they need to share with the market is a lot more than previously, right? Like, think of the world in which Sam Calendly was like a multi-billion-dollar business, something as simple as Calendly. And now look at, like, if you go inside even Replit, like, think of how much product the Replit team with its 350 employees has pushed out into the market. And so I do think that it requires more allocation of resources against engineering than before. I also think that go-to-market has become harder than before in some cases and requires also more allocation of resources, which means G&A is probably where it cuts down.
I like that answer.
Yeah, I like that.
Question number three. These companies have less entry-level workers and managers than non-AI native companies used to have. They hire less people that are at the beginning of their career, and they have less frontline managers. How many less do you think? Option one, 5% less. Option two, 15% less. Option three, 25% less.
Again, I would go back would love your take, but like our example, I didn't have any so again, it's entry level and frontline, you said, right?
Yes.
So,
Zaman.
and
I would go
these are
for the
entry level
largest
sales.
possible number.
Are they entry level sales leaders or entry level personnel?
Personnel.
Okay.
I think 25% less. I think we've moved, there used to be large classes of entry-level people.
Yeah.
And so any meaningful reduction it's not a marginal decision about we want 10 people versus 12 people. It's we don't need this function anymore. That's my take. This is my hot take.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I
that
think
would, I
spans
would
of
say
control. I
25%.
think spans of control also are different now too.
Yeah.
Right. Going from people doing like 15 to 1 is not unheard of. Like even higher than that. So
As a sales manager?
yeah, right now my VP of sales has 35 direct reports. That we're obviously going to change. We're obviously going to go change that. That's not what it is right now. But the ability to use tools and AI to kind of make their job better is definitely there. I think in the old world, we would immediately, oh my God, 35 to 1, God, this 8 to 1, let's go hire a bunch of frontline managers to go do that. I think people are waiting and they're slow rolling that decision
Interesting.
now.
I say so 25% is our answer.
Yeah.
Wrong, thankfully. 15%. It was just cool. Yeah. It's interesting. In sales, I haven't noticed it in pure enterprise sales functions, like the Harvey enterprise, the factory enterprise, the Cursor enterprise. That feels like it's running very closely to how enterprise at Snowflake, Rubrik, those companies used to run at before. And then I'm noticing that in companies like Replit, where you have actually all three functions, you have a mid-market and an SMB and an enterprise, you're noticing that the composition of leader to rep has shifted quite a fair bit, which is interesting. And I don't know why it's not shifting on the other side. I have no idea. It sometimes just is like a belief, like we believe it should be this way, and then everyone ends up doing it that way.
I think, the three of us are all AI pilled, so to speak. I think there's still a lot of reticence out there in the world. And I think there's a lot of people that are resistant to heuristics and paradigms that they've grown used to over the years. I hear it all the time. And it's a closed-mindedness. You present an idea and it's dismissed very quickly sometimes because it's just span of control 7 or 8 to 1. I learned that from, Stanley McChrystal and, the armed services.
How could decades later we do anything different? Which is a good entry point into topic number 2. I have been reading your LinkedIn posts, and a lot of them are around hiring, which obviously is one of the key things that you're keeping an eye on, and you're scaling the team so aggressively. So it's something that's really top of mind for you. A few things stood out, and then we can kind of dissect this, is the amount of effort you had to go through to find the right VP of sales for this. I think you met with 600 candidates. You had to run a very comprehensive search.
Oh, I didn't meet with 600 candidates myself. We had 600 applicants probably.
You had 600 applicants, got it. You had 600 applicants, so 600 candidates in the funnel, essentially, to get to that one hire. For a long time, you were the first screening call for a lot of the reps you guys were hiring. You've got a really interesting point of view on the type of people to hire, how AI proficient versus not, how ready for their job versus not. Like there's this 80-20 formula of yours that I found interesting. Talk to me, like, before we get into all of this specifically, the one thing I've been thinking about nonstop is how difficult enabling your team must be. And the difficulty comes from a few things. One is how many people you're constantly hiring in sales. Like you're hiring a lot. So you have these new people that you have to keep developing and getting to productivity. The pace at which you're growing, you need to get them to productivity relatively quickly. And your product keeps evolving at a pretty fast rate, which is this new problem in AI, which is how do you get salespeople to speak intelligently about these platforms and these products when they're evolving so much all the time? How different is enabling a person or a team compared to how you used to do it before?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to be intentional around enablement and just be very, very structured behind it. So the moment I knew I was going to hire at these levels, the very first hire I made was somebody to run and help me build enablement.
Oh, wow.
I hired a woman from my last company who's phenomenal. Her name is Yo-Yo, probably one of the best world-class enablement leaders out there. So I recruited her like literally day one. I was saying that, hey, I'm going to go hire this fast. And I know that hiring is not going to be successful if we can't enable these people. So she came in and literally just built this world-class on her own, by the way, no spans or controls, no team underneath her, literally 0 to 1 on her own, built this world-class program, onboarding program for our GTM folks and that we still run today. Obviously, we're
She was
hiring at a
one
much more.
person doing it.
She's still, and even to date, we're 7 months into the year, she is still one person today. She's making her first hire after me pushing her right now. And that person is even on board right now.
That's
So she did
wild.
it. Yeah, she did it all on her own.
Is it a cultural thing at Replit that, did Amjad instill this idea of frugality from, 8 years in the wilderness before the explosion?
I think this notion of one of our core principles with seek pain and, just doing more with less. I think that is kind of the DNA of there, and just, getting people who want to do the 0 to 1 and get their hands dirty and really doing that. I think it's just how we all here are just wired to go do, right? We're just wired there. And again, that's not forever, right? Like Yo-Yo's at a point now where she needs to go do it. But I think it gives you a viewpoint on what is happening at the ground level. If you appreciate, I did it myself for 7 months on my own, where I did all candidate first screens. I did it, and it just gives me a true appreciation for the business, right? So anyways, enablement is a game changer. And the amount of time we spend on enablement now of getting people hired, going through the company onboarding, and then based on your role, having them go through a 2-week boot camp, right? And they actually graduate, with a certification. Where they actually graduate with a certification. And that is the time you're actually allowed to hit the street. That's when you get your territory. That's when you get your book. And, listen, this last boot camp, we had examples of people who didn't pass their certification. And that's a good barometer and a test very early on in someone's journey to either course correct and see if what we can go do or make a different decision, right? So we're working through those pieces there.
This is fascinating because I do think that enablement is not thought of as one of the first few hires you make. And it seems like the critical hire to make when you're going to be onboarding so many people so quickly and you need to maintain this growth rate. There's this other, belief that I hear of a lot in the ecosystem is that when you're scaling at this pace, you have to have this tolerance for a pretty high turnover rate, combining voluntary, involuntary, and then promotions. You hear the numbers somewhere between a floor of 25% to up to about 35-40%. What's your point of view on, as you guys are building this machine, what do you expect it to be? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, I'll tell you. So right now, we're nowhere close to that. No one's leaving. No one is leaving either voluntarily or, we've had a few involuntary stuff that we've had to go do, but it's very, very small. We're hiring to the right levels. People are actually earning what they want to go earn, and they're actually making a good livelihood. They're getting satisfaction of the day-to-day of the job, learning, iterating. So we're nowhere near those attrition rates out there. I do think that will change, as we continue staffing and we continue growing to the levels we have. I do think performance will normalize it out. We're changing our plans. I'm raising quotas for H2 because H1 was there.
You introduced quotas at some point, didn't you?
What's that? There was no
quotas. You changed the compensation.
There was no compensation plans, and there was no quotas in this company up until January 1st of this year. So,
do you know if OpenAI still doesn't have quotas?
OpenAI does not have quotas, but I think what both Anthropic and OpenAI are starting to talk about a lot internally is this collective book of business. So you have a frontline manager with a handful of reps, and there's a book that they manage together in terms of these key accounts and how much revenue you can generate from them. So they do think about revenue across that portfolio quite a lot. And they try to think of it as a team structure more than anything.
Yeah. I think we were just talking about attrition, right? So yeah, we don't have that. I mean, and my viewpoint is I do think that'll change. If you create a winning culture, and that's the culture I'm creating here, is like, even though we're raising quotas, it's not like we only want a small percentage of our team hitting quotas. We actually want the vast majority of our team hitting quotas, but we want to do it in the right way. So I think as long as you're kind of creating that type of culture where people actually see it, people will actually come out and stay. You'll definitely have the pool of people that we're hiring so fast that we may have gotten wrong, right? We may have gotten wrong, and that's just the nature of what it is. And, sooner and earlier you realize that and move on, the better.
Quotas is also this thing that everybody is wrestling with, like what should the right multiple to OTE be? And so you would see companies had kind of normalized around 3 to 5 times total income as a person's quota. And so now in this age of AI, there's this one side of the spectrum where people are like, account executives will be able to do 10, 20 times their OTE. And then again, like actually, this is now from the John McMahon group of people in the market. They're like, it's anything above 1.5 million, 2 million in terms of a person's productivity signals that you're leaving money on the table. You should make it relatively difficult for a person to get to 1.5, 2 million, and you should hire more people if that one person could do more, because you cannot efficiently manage the sort of demand that would be required to manage to do a lot more than that, especially mid-market and enterprise, where you have to get on planes and go meet people, and there's all of this stuff. You have to go for dinners. Like there's things that you just can't scale with AI. What are you seeing internally, and how do you think about what the upper limit of productivity looks like today for an account
Yeah,
exec?
I mean, so we're looking at baselines, right? We're looking at baselines. We're looking at data. So we have half a year's worth of data. So when I came in, I did half year plans. And in
Mm.
hindsight, we could have argued and said we should have done quarterly plans, but we did half year plans, and the half year actually ends today. Today's the half year point, June 30th, and we now have we have 6 months worth of data to actually look at it. And like, the spoiler alert is, the vast majority, greater than 90% of our team overattained their number and just blew it through the socks, whether you were in commercial or in enterprise, just did it.
Your team
Yeah.
crushed the
And again, that could be, like I set the number too low. We just didn't know. I mean, TLDR just made a lot of money. So we're right sizing that, right? But a few things that we didn't have in H1 that we have in H2 is I bifurcated the team. We actually have teams that focus on new logos, and then I have teams that focus on expansion. In H1, teams were doing both new and expansion. So you have to kind of look at the business and saying that, hey, if you pull that apart from somebody and somebody's just doing new logos, what is their productivity that they can actually go do, and what does feasibility look like? So we're just looking at trends. And we actually pulled every single person to see what feasibility looks like based on the pipeline numbers we actually have and how much pipeline they can go do. And then we're coming up with a number. What we are doing for H2 is I am doing quarterly plans for a couple of reasons. I want the ability for my reps to earn accelerators twice, because I think that's a good motivating factor versus once. So someone, you just blow through their Q3 number and get into accelerators, and someone can blow through their Q4 number, get into accelerators. So I want to kind of give that carrot. And then the other thing, which is more of a benefit for the business, it allows us to assess quarter. Like if things go well, maybe Q4 looks different, or, market conditions completely deteriorate for some reason or another, or something happens that allows us to adjust quickly. So those are some of the factors we're doing right now. But I'll tell you, just for numbers sakes, and I won't get into more specifics, our enterprise reps were 1.5 annually for the first half. Every single person is like well above that. So going back to like, what does, is 2 million a lot, per rep? I would say no, 2 million is not all. Yeah. You can do a lot more. So we're
That's so
at that.
cool to see, right? Like because you saw what like the upper limit of like humanly possible was. Because like so much of it just comes down to like what can you humanly do, and you've led teams where you
Yeah.
see people that are hard workers and they're putting in the hours, but there's this limit that they had in terms of what they could do, and hence what they could earn, and all the impact they could have, and the value they had for the business. And all of that just changes now if they're doing
It does.
3, 4 fundamental.
Yeah. I mean, and for us, I think the big shift we're looking at is, as we shift more into outbound versus inbound, I think the nature of outbound opportunities are going to be a lot different. The inbound opportunities, you're taking an order, right? You're taking an order, very, very quick sales cycle, happens very, very quickly. And yes, the bandwidth is more about how many meetings per day can you actually go do to satisfy the inbound. Outbound is different. You get an outbound at a company like FedEx, you got to go nurture it. You got to go build it. You got to go on site and build a really, those
Where's some
opportunities are going
dinners?
to take
Where's
longer to
lunches?
close. That is the big mind shift and muscle shift that I think our company is going to go through in the next few months, of just getting the maturity of our sellers that have been so used to the inbound, now starting to see these outbound opportunities with these amazing logos, but they need to be worked differently, right? And there's going to be a lot of enablement, a lot of education, and a lot of that comes with that. So that's what I'm looking at right now and focusing on.
There's this Sam runs Pavilion, and in the CRO school, I think it was in CRO school where I had heard this, and then Trial Morton speaks about this a lot as well, is that the job of the CRO is to look out 2 years, 3 years down the line and start putting in pieces today that will make the plan 2, 3 years down the line happen, right? So like you doing outbound so early is like looking out into the future. Then the VP of Sales's job is to hit the number, is like accurately be able to forecast and just hit the number, whatever cadence you're on, monthly, quarterly, yearly. It's like hire a good team and keep hitting the number over and over and over again. And that's kind of how we thought about a VP of Sales previously. From what I've seen, that's still what is required of great VPs of Sales, right? Like, I need you to own this number and I need you to just make it so that there's just no chance that we miss it. Is that the core that you're looking for? And then what else was different this time when you went hiring for them?
I'm actually not, to be honest with you. Like, hitting the number, that to me is like, that's par for the course, right? Like that's par for the course that's expected to go do. And yes, we do forecast calls, we do deal reviews and all the things that are there. And I'm a firm believer that if you know, do the right behaviors, numbers will follow. So yes, that's part of it. But for me, it's more about the productivity ramp of making sure people are, continue to, ramp at the right levels and timeline when they get out of boot camp. It's about teaching. We have a lot of non-traditional profiles that, I've hired here that have not come from the sales world, is growing them and maturing them and enabling them to actually negotiate better, do discovery calls better, to qualify better. It's more of those things that I want to see an improvement on rather than hitting the number. Hitting the number is the output. And, like we'll get there if we actually do these things. Like if I can do better discovery, if I can drive better conversion from discovery to POC, and because we know that once we actually get customers in a POC stage, we convert 80% of those deals. That to me is what I want to see an improvement on, right? Is the enablement and the education and there. Because if I do those things, the rest of it will follow. Like we don't have a conversion problem. Like we don't get to a POC and lose deals. We get into a POC and we win, right? So how can I get more deals in the POC stage? How can I get more customers to do hackathons with us? How can I get out of those hackathons, in a way where customers want to accept our solution? I look at more of those things that I want my VP of sales to control than I do like hitting a quarterly number.
You guys should do a hackathon at the Go-to-Market Summit.
We're talking about doing that right now.
Yeah.
That is so cool. That'd be like the Go-to-Market Hackathon, like 1,000 people are there. Oh, that'll be wild.
That's
I
the
would be
goal.
so excited for that.
Yeah.
Bulls versus Bears.
It is time for Bulls versus Bears, Avazi. This show is just all about random shit.
I love that. Bulls versus Bears. You gotta keep it interesting.
So Bulls versus Bears is, I'm gonna ask you guys a question and you tell me whether you're bullish or bearish about this particular thing. The question I have for you, we'll start with Sam so you can kind of get a feel for it, Ozzy, is you've been spending some time thinking a lot about these AI avatars that are supporting sales in various ways. OneMind, Avara, there's a number of these really exciting companies out there. And what they've got is, in some cases, the ability to be a replacement for a salesperson. When we had Amanda on, it was really interesting to see that you could implement OneMind where the deal size and just would make it so that you wouldn't even tackle that business before, right? The economics wouldn't work, and now you can go after that business. And then the other use case is kind of as a support system of some sort, like Human Plus. which one are you more bullish about becomes the standard in the future? That we'll see a lot more of these avatars that we're interacting with, or that's going to be there. We'll see where it goes, but it's going to be this human plus avatar combination that's going to be the thing.
That's a good question. And I have one rule about technology, which is that I don't ever say computers will never do this, whatever it is. I don't say that. I think we don't know what computers are going to do. They seem to get better all the time. Technology improves at an exponential rate. All of the things that computers will never have imagination. I don't think that's true. Computers will never be able to close an enterprise sales cycle. I don't think that's true.
They won't have
Uh,
taste.
so you did. The question is, am I bullish or bearish on? I'll reframe it. Am I bullish or bearish on AI avatars replacing humans?
Or just combining with humans to create this like super cyborg salesperson that goes and closes all the shit.
I think they'll be both, but I certainly think the bigger opportunity is fully replacing them. Ghazi, part of what we do through Pavilion Gold is we make investments in up and coming opportunities, and so we have an opportunity to invest in OneMind. And so we saw a demo yesterday, and Amanda, the CEO, was interacting with the AI avatar in real time. There's a little bit of latency, but not. It wasn't like it was 3 years ago in Nashville. It was pretty responsive, and all of the questions. So the most common question in that moment is, well, first, it's why is it so expensive? If you're replacing a person, shouldn't it be much cheaper? And she says, well, I'm not replacing a person. I'm replacing 100 people. This thing never sleeps. It never stops working. It works all the time, and it'll close as many deals as is artificially possible. So I feel like, and the other comment is, well, people don't want to buy from robots. What if the robot gets something wrong? And you just think about all of the salespeople that get things wrong all the time, all of the salespeople that don't have the answer to the question, all of the time that you say, can this thing do this? And they don't know the answer. Now, with AI, maybe they have a thing that comes in and says, yes, we can do this, and here's the product specs. But I am more bullish on I think both will exist, for sure. But I think the bigger opportunity is full replacement.
I think it's going to be like this choice that a founder has to make. This is where like the personality of the founder will really matter, because I think it's a decision you will get to make because both options will be available there. It's like you can choose to make this like company with no humans. It's like all this like AI is everywhere, and it's all these like, or you could want like, I want to make the bet that if Ozzy comes in and builds the best sales team on earth, enabled with AI, etc. Like, I think there'll be choices that founders will have to make. And I hope a lot of them make the second choice. And I think the second choice is the one that I think is like most powerful in the near medium term, right? Like you long term, who knows, Sam, but like in the medium term, you can imagine a world in which combining something like that with its inefficiencies with a salesperson who's really good can create like good outcomes. Have you thought about this, Kasi, like implementing this sort of thing internally, like a OneMind?
Yeah, not really a chatbot. I mean, we had early conversations about a chatbot. We've got this other tool internally we call Zerg, which is more of kind of like our search agent. We're thinking about coming up with a solution with that, which will come. Yeah.
For you, the question I have is, you've shared really interesting thoughts on systems of record. Salesforce specifically. You guys are a Salesforce customer, I believe, right? Big Salesforce customer. What are you bullish or bearish about HubSpot, which is kind of a system of record and kind of in the CRM space, but has some unique differences as well in terms of the segment of the market it serves and the place it holds in our ecosystem? Are you as bullish about them as you are about Salesforce?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's different use cases. I see HubSpot as more of their strength being more in marketing automation than I do on the sales side. Yes, they do have a sales version there, but I think their marketing automation is actually stronger in different aspects than kind of the sales version there, for sure. And then Salesforce, Salesforce isn't going away, right? I mean, their revenues may shrink and they may downsize in kind of the commercial segment out there, but they're not going away. And I think with their headless offering there, I think that's kind of a smart move in getting things out into the ecosystem. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my take on it. I mean, we also use HubSpot, by the way, but we use it for marketing automation. and
What
is
else is
actually
the tech stack? What's like your go-to-market tech stack, like the core basic?
it's HubSpot for marketing automation, Gong, and Salesforce, and
That's it.
that's kind of it. Yeah, everything else on top of that is Replit. We built our own CPQ on Replit. We're building our own version of Clari on Replit. We built our own version. We built our own version of Gainsight, which is our customer health dashboard on Replit. And then we have a laundry list of other things we want to go do. We're in fact just hiring for this term that everyone loves, like our version of a GTM engineer, right? Or an AI engineer. We're basically hiring our version of that in their DevOps stack, and their job is going to be to look at the entire ecosystem and look to see where we can start driving some efficiencies.
What's the communication framework between you and you report into Amjad, right?
Yeah.
How at this sort of pace of growth, how often are you guys chatting? How do you have most of your conversations? How much of it is like structured versus organic? Like, how does this work? How do you maintain alignment at this sort of like 10x growth year over year for multi-years?
Yeah, I mean, we're all extremely busy and have crazy travel schedules, and every single week is different, and we're on the road, and it's hard, but we do have some structure, right? So we have like a weekly executive sync, which is basically like Amjad's directs and kind of our extended leadership team. So every single week we meet as a leadership group to talk about the week, if you will. And that's a very ad hoc, productive, like no nonsense meeting that happens every single week. And then I've got a cadence of a one-on-one directly with Amjad. And then the rest of it is just fluid of text.
And that
Slack,
one-on-one is a weekly
calls.
one-on-one.
Weekly by weekly, kind of just depends on the schedule, but it's on the calendar. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen, but we have it on the calendar and we try to meet. And then the rest of it is just constant checking in and whatnot where we need to check in. But there's also a level of trust and a level of communication where, Amjad knows pretty regularly, like what the state of GTM is, what we're doing, what we're working on, and it's my job to update him. And then we talk about it in those cadences.
Ghazi, thank you so much for being our guest on Topline. We loved having you. We're excited for all the success. We're cheering you on, and it's been great.
Amazing.
Smash subscribe on YouTube. Check us out. Listen on Spotify. Join our Slack community. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.